But that selling the tire, that part is under my control. But what's not under my control is the customer saying yes or no.
Right.
That's why it's a lag measure. It's out of my hands. It's now in their hands. The question is, did I place my bet strategically enough?
Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsey!
The best defense is a good offense. You know who said that? Mel, the cook on Alice. Hi. Hey, Marshall. Great to see you.
All our audience members, born after 1980. No clue. Mel, Flo, Alice. No, none of it.
Well, they should all look up. I think it's probably on YouTube. Boot to the Head. It's a classic, comedy sketch, and that's one of the lines from it. So, I don't know why we were talking about that as we came on the air, but you said something, made me think of it. Anyway, whole point is, welcome, Marshall, to It Doesn't Take a Genius. And welcome to our listeners, both of you.
I can picture them now going, hey!
This episode is going to be like, we're being silly, but this is a really important concept that we think a lot of managers really struggle with. And we've done actually kind of a version of this episode before, talking about SMART goals, and we'll link to that in the notes. And you definitely should check that out. It's a phenomenal concept. It's a time-tested concept. This is a slightly newer concept that we learned about from the book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, which is an excellent handbook on getting things done. But anyway, the concept is lead and lag measures. Do you want to give a little bit of a sort of a synopsis of what we're talking about here, Mike?
Yes, because it sounds terribly boring.
It does.
Yes. Lead and lag measures. All right. So we usually use, and as we did with SMART goals, the weight loss example.
Yes.
So the lag measures in our weight loss example would be the numbers on the scale, the number of loops on the holes in the belt. These are the end result measures, and the beauty of these is they're not hard to find.
Quite easy.
Yeah, step on the scale, put on the belt, little tape measure, whatever you got. Yep. Lag measures, incredibly easy to find. The part that we find a lot of people struggle with, including leadership, are the lead measures. Right. And so for lead measures, you could substitute the word activities. So these are actionable things that are within the scope of your control that change the lag measures. And this sounds so simple. So if I'm going to change my weight, I've got to change the amount of calories that I input, the amount of calories that I burn. So I'm in control of what I put into my body, what expenditures of energy do I put forth. And all of that is immensely trackable, but very much more difficult.
So we have whole companies that have their business models based around these lag measures. So I don't want to discount the lag measures. We have a company called Weight Watchers. They get together and weigh themselves, but that's really only half the battle. I've seen it work though. I mean, I've gone into companies that said, we want to work on our customer service scores. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's work on that. And they know that I'm going to be coming back once a month, and I'll say, how's it going? Let's look at the numbers. And in most cases, just the fact that I'm coming back means they'll get a 5 to 10 point bump on a 100-point scale of their scores going up. The reason is because they're suddenly more conscious of it, right? They know that there's going to be a coming point where they're going to have to look at those numbers, step onto the scale, if you will. And it's not hard to track. They just look in the computer and see the score. They step on the scale and read the number, read the weight. What we're talking about is really taking this to the next level, because those activities are getting really specific on something that's going to most likely drive that lag measure, that goal that we're trying to hit, right?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Yeah, and you make such a good point. Where the focus goes, the energy flows.
That's right.
And
Look
so
at you. Look at you.
that was
Say it again. Could you just share that with us?
where the focus goes, the energy flows.
That's my tramp stamp. I've decided.
Okay.
That's
Yeah. I
okay.
thought that's what it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're looking at the fact that just by talking about it, all of a sudden people become more aware, and what is that? What gets measured changes, what gets observed changes. So
Yeah.
so what we're talking about is how do you take that to a more intentional level? So you get this little 10% bump just by talking about it and thinking about it. And but if I want to go farther than that, now I've got to start measuring the lead measures, the activities that ultimately determine how the lag measures turn out. And if we take your customer survey, customer experience measures, every business that is in the sector has some form of customer satisfaction measure.
Yep.
And so we need to get surveys returned, and we've done this long enough to know that unhappy people, they've returned their surveys at a pretty high clip. They've got a story to tell about their discomfort, their displeasure, and they will return the surveys. A lot of businesses struggle with when things go well, and especially if it's a repeat customer where we've taken great care of them multiple times in a row, they tend to not give us feedback anymore. I told you, I told your parent company, I told whoever that you're awesome. Do I have to do it again? And so now we see the scores aren't reflective of the actual organization and its service providing, how it's providing service.
Yeah.
So the discussion is everybody's got a scoreboard, and on the scoreboard is their customer satisfaction score.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody puts it in, and if you're not paying attention to it as a manager, your manager will send it to you. like they'll like, hey,
this number is easy to get to.
Here's your lag measure. I didn't know if you were looking at it. Here's it in your face. They'll write it on a board, send it in an email, post it on Slack, do something with it.
Yep.
But they never send you are your activity measures.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we come in. We start to ask, what are the activities that I could do that would generate more survey responses?
Yeah.
And
so if I may, before we get too far into like specific lead measures that you might use there, a couple powerful things that you said that I just feel like for anybody out there who has a customer service survey, we ought to just say this out loud. Emotional things drive behavior. When my emotions get stirred, I'm gonna take action. So we're not saying that only unhappy people send in surveys. What we're saying is the people that were surprised and excited and delighted sent in surveys as well. But over time, you kept doing a great job, and over time, it's not a surprise anymore, right? So it's not quite as emotional. They maybe still love you, they're very loyal, but they're not going to keep sending in the survey necessarily. Now, maybe we could have a philosophical discussion here. Maybe you do need to continue to surprise and delight. Maybe you need to take a page out of Ritz-Carlton and keep the emotion level up in different exciting ways. Barring that, there's an opportunity here to somehow do something that will lead to the lag measure that we're looking for, that goal we're looking for. And I'll just say this before I turn it back over to you. The 4 disciplines of execution calls this the strategic bet. The lead measure is the thing you think, if we focus on this and do this activity, it's most likely to lead to that lag measure goal that we're looking to achieve. So let me turn that back over to you. There's lead measure opportunities, things we could do that could lead to, for instance, survey response rate going up.
Oh yeah, definitely. So the big goal is CSI. The sub goal is survey response rate, and then the ultimate lead measure of that would be how many of the folks who are eligible to return a survey, how many of our customers have we followed up with to see A, how was their experience, and B, would they be willing to return their survey? And if I start to measure that, right, outbound calls And I can take it even further. Okay, here's outbound calls, and then here's outbound calls where I left a message, or outbound calls where I actually spoke with the person.
Yeah.
I could have follow-up text, follow-up email to go with that. All of these are activities that are within the scope of my control. I can decide today if I'm going to follow up with my customers or not. And we know that there is causation here. If we get more surveys returned, then we will have a higher survey response rate. Ultimately, we should have higher CSI if we're doing a good job as a service provider.
Yeah, one leads to the other. Another lead measure, if I could suggest it, we have a colleague, a highly respected Marshall Goldsmith certified coach, Ed Alosi. Hi, Ed, if you're listening. Who he says there's about 7 things, and it's things that are almost so simple that like there's no way you could necessarily write it up on a board, I guess. But they're things that if we did this every time, turn things around. And my favorite of his, and I know he got this from a book too, but notice the color of the eyes of your customer. So you're going to look into their eyes long enough to notice the eye color, not because you're going to say, boy, those are beautiful baby blues there, but because you're going to notice their eye color, and that's going to help them know that, hey, this guy's actually looking me in the eye. Touching them, somehow, reaching out and shaking a hand or what have you, whatever would be appropriate culturally. But things like that, are we doing that? If we focus on that, it's going to lead to the result. So it doesn't necessarily look that great on a scoreboard because it's sort of an honor system. Like, did you do this with everybody you talked to today? If you did, hash mark. I don't know how necessarily you track it, but there are lots of different things out here that we might place our bet on and say, that's the thing that we're going to focus on for this quarter, for this month. So there's another example.
No, that's perfect. You think of, one of that we deal with a lot of service departments, automotive repair facilities. And one of the things that a lot of them do is they're looking, from a safety standpoint, is there anything an additional beyond what you brought your car in for that may need repaired? Yep. And so a lot of them, will have a tire goal, right? We want to sell so many tires. Mm-hmm. And what we're talking about is that it's not that they're selling more tires than are needed. What happens is more frequently than not, people come in, they get, a service done on their car, and they have bad tires or tires that need replacing, and they leave without anybody telling them.
Yep.
And so there's tons of money just driving away from service departments. And so you'll go into the employee break room, and there'll be a big sign and say, we will sell 500 tires this quarter, and it shows how far they are. And so, but they're measuring the lag. The lag is the sold tire.
Yeah.
The lead measure would be activities like taking the tread depth. If I check the tread depth and make a note of it on the repair order, well, now I've got a much better chance of, even if I don't bring it up, the customer bringing it up.
Yep.
Well, hey, that, you wrote in the red box my tire measurements. Is that something I need to be worried about? Oh, yeah, you might need some tires there, dude. So the next activity would be presentation of the tread.
Presenting that doggone inspection.
Yeah. Hey, look, we checked your tires, and they're all green. You should be good for another zillion miles. Or, oh my goodness, these really are to the point where, they're probably not going to be safe, and you're putting you and your family at risk if you continue to drive on these. And so measuring tires would be an activity. Presenting what we found would be an activity. If the people declined initially, said, well, I don't have a lot of money right now, I maybe have to do it next month. Following up on declined service work, declined tire purchases would be an activity. And so if I would measure and chart those with the same degree of enthusiasm as we're tracking the sold tires, actually, I don't have to track sold tires. Right. If I'll just track the activities. If we measure every tire that comes into this repair shop, and we tell the customer about it, tire sales will go up. Our lag measure will appear. We will succeed.
So one last thing to say about that. notice that all those activities were owned by a role. There was a person in charge of gauging the tire. There was a person in charge of presenting the inspection. There's technically a person in charge of selling the tire, but that selling the tire, that part is under my control. But what's not under my control is the customer saying yes or no.
Right.
That's why it's a lag measure. It's out of my hands. It's now in their hands. The question is, did I place my bet strategically enough? Did I focus on the things that I think are going to drive the behavior, drive the number that I want to see, so that I set myself up for the best chance of the stuff outside of my control going north, going the direction I want it to go. So I present it every time. Turns out I was able to have more customers say yes. My lag measure of sold tires went up. Perfect example.
Yep. Well, and this, it seems pretty straightforward, but over the last 20 years, we have struggled and struggled and struggled to get leaders to post and celebrate and talk about the lead measures.
Yep.
And I think part of it is just the environment we're raised in. You don't see lead measures anywhere, but you see lag measures everywhere.
Right.
You're watching the Jerry Lewis telethon. Here's how much money we raised.
Yep.
That's the end result. You're looking at the United Way thermometer, and it's showing you how much money was raised. Every
market tickers on TV and
exactly everything that you see in environmentally is a lag measure.
Yeah.
Which is fine if you're not part of the team that has to change that measure. Yeah, if I'm just looking at the stock market and I don't have a lot of say in how that all comes together, that's fine. I don't need to see the activities. But if I'm on the team that needs to change this, now I've got to measure activities. And it's usually not in a report. If it is in the report, I've got to go dig it out.
It's much harder to measure.
Much harder to measure, much harder to find. In many cases, we find ourselves with a manual system where we have each team member has a piece of paper and they're making tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that so satisfying diagonal. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, cross. 1, 2, 3, 4, cross. So because the software is not built to track the activity that we know is going to get us to the end result. And so, I would challenge you, if you're at your workplace right now, just look around, and I bet somewhere within your view, either on the second monitor or on the wall or on a piece of paper that your boss has handed you, you will find your lag measures. Here's what your sales are pacing. Here's what your customer satisfaction is pacing. Here's what your inventory level is. You're gonna have all these lag measures just lying around, but there will not be in your line of sight a single activity measure, and that is where all the magic happens.
So to summarize here, we have things under your control that are activities that probably, if you focus on one or two, and you have to place your bet, your strategic bet, they're the thing that you may have to manually do it, but if you can track it and focus on it, it's going to move that goal lag measure that you're looking to achieve. So we're suggesting you take some time to think through what would be that thing that we focus on, and how could we go about measuring it, and put it up on the wall, put it somewhere where it's public. That's a whole other discussion, talking about the scoreboard, but you got to figure out that lead measure, that thing to focus on. Let me ask you one last question about this, Mike, which is, what if I pick the wrong lead measure?
Ooh.
What if it doesn't boost my score? I start looking, and just like 30 days in, I haven't moved the needle on that CSI score or on my unit sales or whatever it is. What do I do?
Well, I think that's what we have to gather the team around, and we have to reevaluate. Was this truly the behavior that was going to make the difference? And so, go back to our weight loss example. There's this wonderful saying in the fitness community: you can't outrun your fork.
Yeah.
So maybe I picked miles per week. That's I'm gonna, I'm in charge of how many miles per week I run. I'm gonna run, 5, 10, 20, 50 miles a week.
Mm-hmm.
That's my activity. I focused on that activity, but I keep going to the scale. My lag measure, the scale literally says 1 at a time when I step on it. So now I know, okay, that's not enough. Right. It was a good activity, but it wasn't the most impactful activity that would change the lag score. And now I have to look at, all right, what's the intake? And so now I'm looking at the other activities that impact this. And lo and behold, I tackle those to see if that's going to have the effect that I'm looking for.
So change your bet. That's something you can do. Another thing you could do is to say, you know what, it's just not been enough time for the burn to make it through the system. It's a slower burn, and we're going to give it another month. Let's just see. But I think the exciting thing about what you said is, let's get the team together to talk about this, because you know what you're doing when you do that is it's a pretty authentic conversation. We're talking about real stuff, and so you as the manager aren't saying, I am Moses, here are the 10 commandments, go do it. Instead, what you're doing is focusing the team yet again on the goal that you're trying to achieve. You're only going to hit pay dirt by doing that. So we could talk about lead measures for a very long time and help you make a lot more money and have a lot more success with your organization every time you do it. It's just a phenomenal concept.
It is. And like I said, do an inventory, a visual inventory. You'll figure out real quick, this is the area that you're putting the least amount of focus on.
Yeah.
And so being intentional about the activities, measuring, providing feedback on that, man, the good stuff is going to come.
Well, we started talking about Mel the cook on Alice, and I would just like to say, chef's kiss. Great episode. Love your content.
Well, kiss my grits. That was a good one. All right, let's throw it up to our announcer, Mr. Wolf, who holds us accountable for ending these things. So thank you, Mr. Wolf.
And there you have it, another session of contemporaneous extemporizing from Mark and Mike. I know it's redundant, but consider who we're talking about. As always, feel free to share the ideas you heard here. No rights are reserved, no permissions needed. Thanks. See you next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius.
That's good enough.